Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down.
All right, here we are, folks.
Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we're gonna light it up tonight. We're gonna light it up tonight. We're gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We're gonna light it up.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that St. Simon's down in Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the program. South Africa, South Africa, Hondit. This is Chris live in central Pennsylvania with the president of the United Independent Movement, once again, Mr. Neil de Beer, a frequent guest on the program in the past, and the political party which launched its 2024 campaign before anyone else did last year in February, I believe it was. I was there at Tygerberg. Neil, how you doing?
Chris, thank you to all the viewers. It's a cold Sunday. I'm wearing my UIM top, so it is a great day here, though, and always, Chris, an absolute honor to be with you. Very much.
Well, Neil, it's a pleasure. You know, we've talked a lot in person, and we've met. We've also I've covered your events, I've covered the party, and been introduced to many of your candidates across the country, and some of your serving members of the party. It's been interesting to say the least. Now, off camera, just before this, and we don't have to get into this, but I just thought I'd share it with the audience. You and I were talking about, of course, I just recently ran as a Republican for the state legislature here in Pennsylvania. And I learned some very painful lessons the hard way about how dirty and how nasty politics can be, and just all the things involved. You know, both of us worked in intelligence previously, and both of us are not exactly spring chickens. We're not old, but we're not spring chickens. And I think both of us have been learning lessons about politics over the past year. I think it's been a fascinating journey, and for you, I know it's fascinating. Probably a lot more fascinating than my journey's been. How are things going with UIM? Are you getting the traction you're hoping for, and what's happening?
Yeah, Chris, it's like an onion. You know, you peel and you peel away, and then more and more and more. And I don't think you get to the core of it. You know, you and I know, having served in intelligence many years, that you follow certain algorithms to get to the truth. You know, people don't get it. You know, it starts with a rumor, then it becomes a story, then it becomes information. You verify, and only then does it become intelligence. And I think this is the thing I'm trying to do that in politics, but Chris, it's not happening. There are so many layers. So I'm just bashing ahead. And yeah, we have grown, Chris, you know, from 4 years ago, being a small movement that was based on a Facebook rant I had 4 years ago about where we are, what we are, why we are, to a political party who then went into local government, who is in local government. So yeah, you're right. Not only am I and you not spring chickens, but the UIM is not a new kid on the block. We've been 4 years. We've been in government now for 2 years. And we have massively exploded, you know, to where we are today, where we go, Chris, to national tours. I've just come back 2 days ago from KwaZulu-Natal. And let me tell you, where we couldn't get 8 people under a tree, we can't fit in 200 people in a hall now. So I think the message is traveling, and here's the message. The truth, nothing but the truth. So help me God. That's all I have. I stick to the truth because, Chris, as you know, You have to remember a lie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, that's the way to be. I mean, it's to be transparent, be forthright. I mean, obviously that doesn't mix well with politics sometimes. We know the backroom deals that take place and, that sort of thing. But, I want to, that's good to hear that your party's doing well, that you're attracting audiences. And I was aware of your KZM visit. Fatima and I talked about that the other day. And she said that, your party has limited resources, but you're making the best use of the resources you have. And I think one of the smart moves there is that both you and Fatima are known in many parts of the country. Of course, her for her past time as a celebrity, on soapies. I think she smiles wryly when I mention she's a former soapy star. I don't know if she's embarrassed by it or surprised that an American knew that she was on a soapy. But the point is that both of you are known, and rather than having you both travel together, that's diminishing your resources. She's focused in one place, you're focused in another, and you've got other folks going around. But let me shift gears very quickly here, Neil. I've watched some of the video from your time as a counselor on the Cape Town Municipal Council. And one of the things you seem to be most passionate about is safety, and public safety is an issue. Just the other day, this once again disgusting, heartbreaking story, an 8-year-old girl and her 1-year-old brother or 3-year-old brother were playing, and gangsters running through the Cape Flats, shooting at each other, and they murdered these 2 children. This is heartbreaking. I mean, everybody's lives matter, and these were black children, and Black Lives Matter. But it seems to be lost on Beckett Chile and the justice sector under Ronnie Lamola. There seems to be no justice. In fact, I call your Department of Justice, like our Department of Justice, the Department of Injustice, the Ministry of Injustice, because that's really what they are. They don't prosecute criminals, and we're finding more and more SAPS officers. I don't mean to beat up SAPS. There's very good, dedicated, hardworking, honest cops, but there's just too many bad ones. We just found another guy who murdered this gentleman. He was part of a gang. He's a detective, and he's out and murders this guy, and they killed the wrong guy. They killed a guy in his bakkie at the gate to a business the other day, and it wasn't even the right guy. But this story in the Cape Flats of, it's just another day. And I saw that, is it Lucinda Evans, I think her name is? She's an activist. She was ranting the other day, and she was going after Fidel Adams. I don't know it's Fidel Adams' fault, but she was expressing her anger about 48 murders in the Cape Flats in a single day. Public safety is one of your passions, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us a little bit about this? And does the UIM have potentially any answers or thoughts on this public safety issue?
Yeah, Chris, sometimes I think I border on insanity. I must tell you that sometimes I wake up in a country where I'm thinking, am I the only one that's in this rabbit hole? You feel alone. I must tell you, at times you think that we are so far removed from reality. And I'll tell you what, this is not a SA phenomenon anymore. This is a global phenomenon. Chris, it's like the world's gone mad. Like, people like you and I that spent a tremendous amount of time in uniform, people like you and I that traveled to other countries to fight wars of justice, well, what we declared as justice. It's impossible to say to yourself that South Africa can any longer be divorced from this world gone mad. We have more world wars running right now than what we had in World War II. At least in World War II, we bloody knew who the enemy was, and we knew who to fire on. Chris, that's changed. Your neighbor is the criminal. Your police officer is the criminal. Your boss, your politician, your leader, and sometimes your religious leader is the devil incarnate. So our problem, and I'll say it straight, is not fighting crime, which I do, as you know, every day, being involved with our policing, being involved in council. We are not addressing, Chris, the actual root cause of crime. We are losing the battle. That's it. We are losing the battle on the battlefield. We have surrendered the hill. We are not even halfway up the hill. We have slid down, and as a combat officer, as a person, once you have lost the advantage of taking a hill, you have lost that day's battle. You've got to go back, regroup, reinstitute, replan, re-energize, and go fight again. It's as if we can't do that. And it's clear. 3 reasons. Beckett Chile is incompetent. He's not competent. The king is naked. Hy is 'n donder. He is an idiot. And as long as he remains a person who is an idiot, who was not even capable to carry the rank as the commissioner of police, and they promoted him. Secondly, we have an incompetent turnout of cadets. We are trying to throw boots on the ground, but we forgot that to be a police officer is not just about being fit and having a gun. You have to be a crime detector, an analyzer. You have to be someone that understands, Chris, with all respect, for God's sake, what is forensics? And we don't have that. And lastly, leadership. We have an absolute lack of leadership. And that's why my last video is currently trending on nearly 2.5 million when I said, Becky Tele, I'm sorry, I know who you are. It's time, my friend. It's time. You've got to understand that you failed and that you've got to go. But there's a reason why he's not going, Chris, and I don't have to tell you why. I think people know too much of each other.
Yeah, that's why Jacob Zuma was so successful for so long. He was head of MK Intelligence. He knew where bodies were buried, and that's why he survived for so long. Absolutely. Well, listen, Neil, you make a statement here that I think that people are missing entirely, and I think it's refreshing to hear it from someone other than myself. But first, I got to say this. Can I get in your next video that goes 2.5 million views? I'm envious of 2.5 million views.
Gone viral. Absolutely. Not because it was a good video, not because it was a good statement. It was the bloody truth.
Yeah.
It's refreshing. And people suck it up like in a desert. That's it.
Now, people want to hear the truth, at least people that are really engaged in life. But what you touched on here is something that I think people do not realize. And if you've served in uniform, you get this. And the analogy you're making, the comparison about taking a hill, going on the offensive, if you lose that momentum, it's not simply restarting and going again. The criminals have taken over South Africa. When people in broad daylight in Port Elizabeth run around with AK-47s and assassinate taxi bosses with total disregard for the civilians walking down the street, when we see the level of theft and PPE fraud by ANC politicians, when we see, in Conla, Travelgate, Oilgate, the arms deal, the list goes on and on and on and on. Pala, yes, Munir Pala, I haven't forgot about him. The list goes on and on. It's the criminals run the country. I mean, the illicit cigarette trade, when they, for whatever reason, block the sale of cigarettes during lockdown, it goes on and on. To get back to where you need to go is not going to happen in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It's going to be a 20-year effort to restore normalcy to South Africa, I believe. Now, you might be able to do it faster if you have a large enough governing coalition or group. But when South Africa went to the polls in 1994, I was asked as a young officer by some people who knew that I followed South Africa. He said, so, Chris, what do you think is going to happen? I said, well, what do you mean? Well, I mean, how are things going to go? I said, well, you got to pay attention to what's been happening in the townships for the past few years. We've got people necklacing others. We've got this internal civil war between Inkatha and the ANC. I said, you've got to pay attention. The thing about the police that needs to be done is they need to be reformed and need to be refocused. Now, Neil, I'd appreciate your input on this because you serve in the police. So you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. But during the apartheid era, the police as a service, generally speaking, were very effective at keeping most white South Africans from being affected by crime, especially violent crime. Most white South Africans had no idea that there was a level of crime that was happening around them in places like townships and rural areas. But black South Africans and other South Africans largely had to live with this crime because the response wasn't as good or efficient. But most white South Africans were kept away from it. What I said needed to happen after 94 is that the South African police need to be turned, and what became SAPS, needs to be turned into a community policing organization where cops walk the beat. They're on the street, they're either on foot or on horseback, going through neighborhoods, and people trust them. They know they're trustworthy. They have to be paid living salaries. They have to give professional training. You have to have forensics where you actually handle evidence and get it to the prosecutors. All that needs to happen, and the cops need to be on the beat. That's not what happened. And the surge is up and down with the number of cops. They seem to think that more cops is the answer. No, trusted police is the answer. So is any of what I just said wildly wrong, or what do you think about that? Let me get your thoughts on that, because you serve the police.
No. Let me quickly tell you, trust, respect, and one more thing, honor.
Yeah.
If you don't have trust of the community, you don't have respect from that community, and you don't have something called honor, Those are the fundamental three matters that work in every single national service, policing service. I watched, very interesting enough, because, you know, like you, I suck up info. I love info, intelligence. And yeah, maybe there's a lack of the other kind of intelligence, but we'll get to that. But Chris, when we laugh about it today, we take the politics away if we can. But we had, you know, our police used to have yellow vehicles at one stage. It was yellow. So the police van, the police car, it was all yellow. And I remember when a yellow van came around the corner, black or white, it didn't matter. When that police vehicle came around the corner, no matter if you were guilty or not, you stood dead still, you shut up, and you somehow apologized just in case. There was that border of fear respect. When a police officer got out, this was unmistakably a man of law and order. So I saw a clip of a state, I'm not too sure, of an American police chief who stood with a picture of a robber, of a criminal, whom the police shot because he fired at them. And he stood there in that town with a picture, and he said, we didn't do enough to shoot him, to show him that if you shoot at us, you will pay the ultimate price. And then he said, and by the way, if anybody comes into your house and attacks your family, I hereby want you to shoot them dead. And I looked at this, Jared, and I said, at what point did this man also come in his life where he turned and said, we now are at war? And it's not about killing someone. It's not about that kind of humanity collapse. We are too late, Chris, in this country to look back and say that we can now become a service again. We can become a rerouted entity. Unfortunately, we are now at a state of domestic undeclared war. The guns they are using against us to commit domestic violence are actually guns you use at war, Chris. It's not a shotgun or a pistol. These are automatic rifles, AK-47s, our R4 and R4 rifles, and these people are engaging the civilian population with this kind of fire. Now, sorry, we will have to now get fire on fire. We'll have to clean it up. We will have to take them on. We will have to suppress them and then establish law and order. And only then, Chris, once we have drained these people from our internal swamps, suck them out and put law and order back, will we then only be able to say, okay, fine, let us now again regain trust of our civilian population. The civilian population will now tell you, fight now, defend us now, save us now. And that's what I am prepared to do every day of my life.
Well, for me, I thought all bets were off when it came to public safety when Brett Kebble was murdered in broad daylight in Stanton City. That really sent alarm bells to me. Someone as connected to the ruling party as Brett Kebble, someone as wealthy as Brett Kebble, and just assassinated in broad daylight. That's what 15, 18 years ago, something like that. Now, it's been a while ago, but that's when I'm like, whoa, we need to pay attention to what's going on with crime in South Africa, because this isn't simple, crimes of opportunity. There's something serious going on here with syndicates and with assassinations. And of course, we've seen it play out with ANC counselors in KZN, where, people want to get their fingers on the tenders. So they want to be the next person on the council, and they're further down the list. So they pay someone or they assassinate someone and they move up and they become the counselor. It's pretty frightening how ingrained this level of violence has become.
I made an analogy, and when I say it, because your eyes won't go, I'm telling you, when I say what I'm going to tell you now, you are going to nod. We, if not already, have become Colombia.
Yeah. Have become, with the kidnappings, the ransoms, the assassinations. Yeah, it's frightening.
Chris, what happened in Colombia? I'll tell you. You had a person who was fighting another person who at the end of the day took over the drug trade, started shooting the other people in the drug trade in the streets. That's point one. Point two, what then happened was people started dying in the crossfire. Those people went to the police and said to the police, you need to protect us. So they started shooting the police. The police then went to the judiciary and said to the judges, you must protect us and send these people to jail. So they blew up judges. The judiciary then went to the government and said to the ministers and the people in the presidency, you better protect us. So they killed the ministers and annihilated, if you can recall, a person that was running and becoming president of Colombia. They murdered and assassinated him. And then when all of this failed, they ran for government themselves and became government. Sound familiar?
Yeah. Well, we've had a narco-terror state in Africa. Guinea-Bissau became a country that was run by, it was facilitating. Yeah.
In South Africa, if that is the barometer, Colombia, failed state, and South Africa, where are we? Well, I'll tell you where. Gangs are fighting. People are now being hurt in the crossfire. Police are being murdered at the rate of an unbelievable amount per month. We've had attacks on judges. We've attempted killings on advocates. We are sitting now where they are moving into government. And here's the problem. Can I make a statement? And I won't withdraw it. The difference in Colombia was at a certain point, government got up and did attack that criminal and killed him. The only reason why it's not happening in this country is because we don't have El Chapo. Our current people in government are the mafia.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. But here's one more important distinction, too. And I've just written a piece which I've sent to the Army War College for publication. I don't know if they're going to publish it in time, but I did put it on my Substack channel. And this article is about friend or foe. Whose side is the ANC on? You know, Colombia benefited from a very close relationship with the United States. We poured billions of dollars into Colombia, military hardware, night vision devices, weapons, helicopters, which when they had the desire and intent to change the trajectory, they needed that. South Africa doesn't have a friend like that right now because Russia's not going to do that. China's not going to do that. And they're pissing off the U.S. every chance to get the ANC. So before we respond to that, I just want to say very quickly here a statement. Then Sean asked a question, but it's not really a question, it's a statement. So I'll let you address it if you want. So the first one is that the disbandment of the 168, 178 regiments of the commandos has had a devastating impact on facilitating the movement of drugs and transshipment across the country because they used to do coordinate search operations and they got a lot of mandrax and daca and all these other things that they confiscated and destroyed. So that's been devastating. That's a long build, a slow burn. It's been 15 years or so since they took away the commandos, but we see the impact of it. That's not the only factor, but it is a factor. Sean Gunter says, has the ANC removed corruption and accused people from the parliamentary list as promised? Kodwa, Montasha, Gigaba, Monkonyane, no, they haven't. You know the answer to that, Sean. They haven't removed them. I mean, Zandile Gumeda was surreptitiously placed on the provincial legislature when she was under 168 charges of corruption. And she's just now going to court after all these years. Ace Magashule, the Vreda Dairy scandal, the asbestos tender, $250 million, Digital Vibes, Zwelin Kizi still sits in parliament. And the special investigating unit, the Hawks, have said the guy is guilty. They have the evidence. Now he deserves a trial, but he hasn't been charged with a crime. All he did was resign as health minister. The ANC does not care about corruption unless it's a low-level functionary that they can make a scapegoat. They're not going to take the big guys out. Okay, so Neil, I don't know if you want to address any of that. The commandos, the ANC not getting rid of people, but the floor is yours.
Winston Churchill, great icon in politics and a great icon of mine, said one day that if a man cannot change his mind, he cannot change the world. Chris, I was part of a regime change, and I know exactly why they closed the commandos. They closed it because in 1994, the commando system was so well established, was such a bastion of defense, that the ANC feared the commando system. No, let's be honest with you. I thought we were talking the truth.
No. We are talking the truth. I mean, well, it's the same. It's the same thing with the Boermog. They're terrified of the Boermog. They put more agents in there than there were Boermog people.
So let's talk about the reality. The commando system, which I served in after my defense force, was a, can I call it, National Guard of South Africa.
Minutemen.
So that was the equivalent. You could call them up. And the thing was that every town, no matter the size, the commando, we shut it because of politics. We should have never shut it. Because today, you could have actually made sure that your farm attacks, your civilian defense, your inner riots, your looting capacity, your crime fighting capacity would have been boosted by having these commando units in every town. We haven't given up on it. The UIM, as you now know, we've written a policy of those civilian defense units to be created should the multi-party charter win. Should it not, we will go ahead in any case to create it because we're allowed to. The difference is it won't be under government auspices, but on a security conclave. But the fact is, that gentleman is not wrong. We miss it now. We should readdress it, like we should address a lot of things that we now realize, Chris, are wrong. I have admitted to many where we made mistakes. I think it's good that a leader can admit to where the problem lies, can admit to it, and by the way, take accountability. That's what we don't have in this country. We don't have a leadership that is willing to take accountability.
Yeah, you're right. No accountability, and you're not exactly on your own in that respect. We have no accountability on this side of the Atlantic either. Unbelievable what's happening here. A government spending $2 trillion in deficit for what? And then giving money away to Ukraine and other places where we have no business being involved. $2 trillion in deficit. Neil, that is larger than the entire federal budget was in the year 2000. Just 2.5 decades ago, our entire budget was less than the debt spending this year. And by the way, in addition to that debt spending, of the $7.4 trillion U.S. budget, $1 trillion is dedicated to paying the interest on our existing debt. That's bigger than our national defense. That's quite frightening. And South Africa's on the same trajectory. You've got billions of dollars in debt there now.
Well, I'll I always say, luckily I can count. So, I'm going to make three statements, Chris. How the hell, like you, I went from government to private business. I bread and butter my own life every day because that is what it is. You've got to work to get a reward. But I've run my own business just like you, Chris. We have to run our business, finance our own business. No one's writing me checks. No one's writing you checks. And by the way, that's why this poor little UIM is fighting, because it funds itself. And it funds itself because it will not be dictated to by money. So yeah, there is a huge negative to not having the money, but there's a huge advantage that when we do achieve what we do, that no one will tell me in Parliament, where I am on my way to, what I will and will not say. Yomur, no way. It's not going to happen. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. No, not like other parties we know. Chris, here's the thing. An economy cannot grow. An economy cannot become a multitude of a debt deficit to a debt positive if you don't have the laws in the country, number one, that allows a freedom of a commercial platform. If you have national laws what want to take your land, that wants to not compensate you, that wants to nationalize every bloody thing, that wants to take everything back to the communist junta of national ownership, what private enterprise in the world is not going to give us money because they believe in us? So no, we've got to change those laws. Number two, it's clear. It's very clear. We spend 1.8 trillion rand a year. That's what it costs. That's our annual budget. 1.87 trillion a year. They stole 3 times our annual budget, Chris. So wait a minute. The Minister of Non-Finance, that idiot, makes a budgetary state. Sorry, Chris, an idiot's an idiot. And I was told the other day.
I'm laughing because he's probably one of the most competent of the ministers they actually have. That's the sad part.
But if that's competent, God knows. But I said the other day, the problem with an idiot, he doesn't know he's an idiot.
Yeah.
And someone must get up and say, excuse me, you're an idiot. You're helping society. Here's the thing. The Minister of Finance of this country this year does his budgetary speech and declares to the country we are spending more than what we earn. Whoa. Chris, whoa. You are saying we are spending more than what we earn. So the first question I asked him was, if this is so, because it's your budget, what are you doing to cut your budget? Now, Chris, when you make a declaration as a FD, a financial director of a company, a CFO, and you tell the board, we are spending more than what we earn, the first thing a good CEO or chairman will say is, start at head office. Where do we cut the expenses? No more lunches, cut the stipends, make sure that the board is not top heavy, start ensuring that the flight costs are reduced, do more Zoom. Do you think that minister, who we say is competent, do you think he slashed cabinet? Do you think he slashed ministers? Do you think he halved these bloody idiots that are riding around with police at $1 billion a year? Did he tighten the belt inside first? No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
Because it doesn't come out of his pocket.
It doesn't suit his pocket and that of his master. So that's I say idiot. Yeah. That's it. And
absolutely.
If he takes me to court, he has to prove he's not.
Yeah, well, he's going to have a hard time proving that one. But hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Chris Wyatt Reports on the Adobe Africa channel here. It is Sunday, May 5th, 2024. My guest today is a previous guest on a number of occasions, none other than Neil de Beer, president of the United Independent Movement, the UIM. Neil, one of the problems here, obviously, and we just saw the figures, $283 billion, not dollars, rand, excuse me, 283 billion rand given to state-owned enterprises since Cyril, not even the whole time Cyril's been in office. That's from 2019. He came in February 2018. So from 2019 until today, 283 billion rand have gone to state-owned enterprises, the likes of Airports Company South Africa, Eskom, Transnet, and of course the albatross known as South African Airways, once a profitable airline that couldn't even land or fly over African states, and they still remain profitable at that time. So we see now Pravin Gordhan is under a lot of pressure as he's exiting politics over this Takatso deal with South African Airways. I mean, just let it die. I mean, this is ridiculous. They're looking for suitors for a company that I would never invest in because I have no control over it, and it's controlled by ANC apparatchiks. Would you agree that the state-owned enterprises instead of the free market are a major problem in South Africa's economic doldrums?
It's the death to society. What was could not be. Now here I'll say it again and I will say it repetitively. The African National Congress are communists. They're communists. Now people go, what? Then I go, yeah. You know they are in a tripartite agreement with the SA Communist Party and with COSATU, the trade unions. Now wait, Chris, whoa. Margaret Thatcher said it clearly. When the people dictate a scenario of winning whilst taking you into losing, what kind of public is that? We are sitting with a system for the past 30 years, and the people aren't hearing me. A communist, nationalist, socialist cannot operate and function a free market, democratic, capitalistic society. Because they can't. Because both oil and water are liquids, but when you put them in a barrel, they don't mix. So the failure of this government is not that they're incompetent, not that they're greedy, not that they eat like pigs at a trough. They are a communistic, socialistic junta. That's why grants first, charity first, unemployment first, nationalization first. And 30 years later, when every communistic government, except the other idiot in North Korea,
Kim Jong-un.
When every system that was communism has fallen, Chris. China is the biggest capitalist in the world, so I call them green communists. So the guy told me one day, what do you mean green communist? I said it's a communist who wants to be a communist, but he knows he needs the US dollar.
I like that description. I call China a mercantilist economy. That's what I call them. They've maintained their totalitarian control over the society, but they've given some elements of capitalism. Yep.
So it's just one point. It's not about the ANC. It's about the government run by the ANC. If we don't get them out in 24 days from tomorrow, we are not going to have a civil war. We are not going to have a social crash. We are going to have an economic nuclear bomb go off in this country, and the afterburn will be 5 years of absolute economic devastation. You know it, I know it, and the people listening to you today, prachtig, they know it, Chris.
Well, there's a couple of things that really resonate with voters, and I would like to ask how this is going on the campaign trail for you. So obviously, when I made my prediction, and I'm tooting my own horn again, but I made my prediction in November of 2021 after the municipal elections, I'm on record as having stated repeatedly since then that the ANC will not get more than 42% in 2024, regardless of when the election's held, and that it will probably go maybe as low as 38. So I said 38 to 42%. Now that's what I said then, but I didn't know about the gift of MK causing, batshit crazy headaches for the ANC. I didn't know that was coming, and I didn't know that that ESCOM would go from 30 or 40 days of mild load shedding to the vast majority of days with no electricity for South Africans. So two things that are of great importance to people who are not traditional voters for opposition parties. In other words, they don't vote for the DA, they don't vote for Freedom Front Plus or IFP. Two things. Number one, load shedding, no electricity. That's number one. And number two, water shedding. There's no water in Gauteng these days. It's crazy. So are these issues anything that UIM is addressing? And if so, is it resonating with voters?
Well, there's a third shedding that's coming. And that's the worst one of all. Food shedding. That's terrible. Trust me, I've been to Africa. I worked in 18 countries on the continent. You can still do water. You can still do electricity. But when food stops, the human being's mind cancels himself out. They become murderers and looters. I'm telling you now, it's coming. It's coming. Plus, it's very clear. And by the way, I must tell you, you have not been far off with any of your predictions in history, my friend. Let me tell you. I will be very careful if we presume that MK party is a gift that is just giving to us.
Oh, no, I'm not implying. No, MK is just the radical economic transformation faction of the ANC. That's what it is. That's that's not good.
Absolutely. Blood is thicker than water, Chris.
Yep.
Now, I'm getting told that there's a lot of blood flowing there. I would be very afraid. And the reason why, Chris, is only threefold. Do you know why the UIM has grown by 45% in 6 months? 45%.
Well, I would assume the issues I talked about had something to do with it. And also, frankly, a lot of people like you on a personal level, and maybe that's part of it too.
Well, can I tell you, they don't like me.
Okay.
They have a lot of opinions about me. Every time I appear on a picture with another person, either a terrorist, a convicted thief, or a corruption, my man. I know exactly who I'm calling now. Okay?
Yeah.
But leave that to me. The reason they back me is because, one, here's the obvious. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of the people on the other side. Number two, the people that were in the DA, the people that were in the Freedom Front, the people that were in the IFP, the people that were in other parties, have now understood that they were let down by them all. And here's the other thing, Chris. When you speak to me, there's one thing the ANC, and I'll tell you that now, there's one thing what the ANC and the red jelly tot of Ricky Malema can't tell me, and that is that I'm a racist. Oh no, because they can't tell me that. So here's their problem. They can't get up and say, but you're a racist. They can't get up and tell you, but you're producing white minority. I wrote the bloody book. So the problem there is when I go into a debate, they bloody know where my heart lies, that I believe that it's not just black lives or white lives that matter. All lives matter. I fought for it. I will fight for it again. So that's why they're kind of going, okay, listen to the UIM, because the leader knows the enemy. So if I go into parliament, Chris, they know that I am going to look, no matter who it is, in the face. And I don't fear them, because the people of this country have had enough of politicians. Chris, you wanted to enter surely politics because you wanted to bring your voice of justice, which you have, to the table. And they don't want it. They fight it like they're fighting me. But I'm telling you now, here's the prediction. I am part of the multi-party charter. I am not part of their ideology. No. I get asked every day, do I agree with the DA? Do I agree? No, I don't. Otherwise, this would have been a DA badge or an IFP badge. It's not. It's UIM. But here's the fact, Chris. I want to remove the ANC desperately. Desperately. Now, you've got to become sane here. I am not going to sit and allow another 5 years if I can help it. Therefore, call it like you want to. The multi-party charter are the closest to people that agree of light, at least. At least. And we all agree about one thing. We must remove the ANC. It's about numbers, South Africa. Numbers. It's about numbers, Chris. It's not about manifestos or portfolios. It's about 50 plus 1. And what is that number? 9,100,000. That's now become truth. Because 28 million people registered to vote, we are going to lose 40% of them on voting day. How do I know that? Well, these are the stats.
History.
In the past elections, that's what we've lost. Between 30 and 40% of registered voters don't come. That's sad. That's tragedy, but that's a fact.
It's the reality.
So fact, 18 million only will cast their ballot. And of the 18 million, the multi-party charter must get then over 9,100,000 to become the government of the day. That's a fact. We can't write that off. That's the reality. And we are fighting, arguing, jostling for position, debating. But this absolute rubbish that we've become one party and that we now swallowed by woke and liberalism, because it's not that way. Stalin, Roosevelt, de Gaulle, and Churchill had to sit in one room at one stage. A communist, a socialist, a Democrat, and a conservative had to sit down to fight Hitler. So after that, they still hated each other, they still disliked each other, but one thing they knew, they had to conquer Hitler. I am drawing that analogy right now. Yes, I have to sit with John Steenhuisen, Peter Groenewald, Honorable Shabisa, Michael Beaumont, Herman Mashaba. I have to sit there with Kenneth Meswe Wayne, and I tell you something out of the room. We are remaining united. This nonsense of saying we have shattered and burst apart and failed. Julle gat hoor. We are fighting to stay together, Chris, because we know what is at stake. We know. I can't speak after the election. But today, we have to unite and we have no choice, Chris. 50 plus 1, or we are going to have a hell of a next 5 years.
Well, South Africa is definitely not on the right trajectory, that's for sure. A few questions in from the audience here. Let me get to these really quickly here. Sam Monco asks a question about would the UIM be interested in lowering taxes? Before you answer it, let me just give a little historical point here. The South African Revenue Service improved tax collection efficacy over 20 years ago and increasingly put more South Africans actually paying taxes into the system. That's completely reversed. It's gone the opposite direction. Plus, you've had a lot of people who fled the country. A lot of capital's gone away. So tax collection is a problem, but the number of people who actually pay taxes is very small. So Neil will be able to answer this question in a second, but I'm a small tax person, but I don't know that lowering taxes at the moment is the answer for South Africa, which has no money. You need economic growth, and then you can lower taxes. Neil, any thoughts on would the UIM be interested in lowering taxes?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the first taxes that must go is the fuel tax.
I'm in accord with that one, 100%.
Yes, yeah, we are suckers. Sometimes the public are like chickens waiting to be slaughtered for the KFC, for the ANC. But listen to Chris, I want to tell you a story. Do you know where Lady Brandt is? Free State.
Yes.
A place called Lady Brandt. Lady Brandt, if I am correct, is 20 to 45 minutes or 30 minutes outside Lesotho. So if you stay in Lady Brandt and you drive 40 minutes, you are in Lesotho. So Lady Brandt is just next to the border between Maseru, Lady Brandt, and South Africa. Here's a fact. Can I tell you why? Because my Secretary General of the UIM, Jacques Talliard, was born in Lady Brandt. Do you know what he tells me? It is cheaper to drive weekly from Lady Brandt to Maseru, fill up your car, and drive over the border back to Lady Brandt. It's cheaper. He says the only problem they have is they go through 2 to 3 passports a year, because every time they have to go through to get to Maseru, they have to stamp it. Now, can you imagine that right next to us, there's a country that pays 3/4 of the price of fuel. So what is this? I'll tell you what it is. It's tax. And it hurts the people because this government knows we have to have fuel. So they hit us where it hurts. So one, fuel must be on the first forefront of taking tax down. Secondly, bread, maize, milk, staple. And I'll tell you how we will do it. Can I give you how we will get more people to pay less tax but to earn more? The government must stop stealing. Stop the stealing. That's how you start. So if you stop the mess, and there we are, we've declared in part of our manifesto, we are cancelling the tender process of this country. There will be no more tender processes. We are going to have what you call adjudication boards. We are taking the right of tender nationally away. You will have half nomination of public experts, half government to sit on an adjudication board. And you will get a tender no longer because of your color. You will get it because of your capability, because the UIM is also scrapping BEE.
Yep.
That's it.
Well, I've come up with a new form of BEE, Neil. I don't know if you know that. Looking at the abysmal Bantu education of the ANC, dumbing down educational standards to 30% in 3 subjects, 40% in your first language to be considered a matric graduate. I call BEE basic education enhancement for adults, young adults. Send them back to school so they become literate and functional. They can actually do something, and give them a stipend while they're doing it. So I have a new BEE. That's my BEE. So hopefully,
we NEE.
Yeah. What's that?
We are NEE. In Afrikaans, it means near. It means no. So near for beer. But in actual fact, it's national economic empowerment. Chris, we cannot continue. And it's nothing, again, you know my heart. You know where I bloody come from. I don't have to attest that I am colorless and blindless. Listen to me. This is about a country that needs help, Chris. And if we are going to say that only a certain segment of this country count, that only a certain segment of this country are viable, and that the majority must stay not poor, poorer than poor, we are never going to make it. We are never going to make it. That's why we are saying the current aptitude of this government on foreign direct investment, on their foreign policy, I'm sorry, Chris, as a person that comes from there, I have changed the mindset to understand that you don't make policy decisions based on history. You make it on the current economics of the day. We're making wrong choices here, and it's going to cause us more suffering if we don't change this trajectory.
100% agree with that. Nehemiah Fredericks put a comment in here. I'm going to address it. It's not for Neil, but I'm going to address it. He says that socialism worked under Burkina Faso under Thomas Sankara before he got killed in an American and European-backed coup d'etat. Okay, well, first off, you have no evidence that the United States had any involvement whatsoever in Blaise Compaore's overthrow of Thomas Sankara. Second, Thomas Sankara was president or in charge of Burkina Faso for just over 4 years. You cannot make a judgment based on that. That's insufficient. And quite frankly, if you look at the educational outcomes, the health outcomes, and the economic progress of Burkina Faso when he was in charge of the country, you can't make a conclusion like that. Socialism did not work. There's a reason why he was taken out in a coup d'etat. But anyway, that's another story. So there's another comment here a little bit ago, and I don't know if you want to talk about this. This is kind of out there on the left field, but Theo de Jager, of course, famous in the agricultural sector in South Africa, recently met with Bill Gates, and a lot of South Africans are concerned about that. They think that the South African agriculture is going to be sold down the river to the evil Bill Gates. Listen, I'm not a fan of Bill Gates and his crappy operating system and how I've been a beta tester or an alpha tester for his crappy software for 5 decades now. But I don't know that Bill Gates is the boogeyman, but a lot of people think he is. Any thoughts? Do you know anything about the Theo de Jager meeting with him? What's that all about?
I don't know about that, Chris, but let me quickly tell you. I want to tell you how fickle, damaged our society is. By now, you know me. You've seen my eyes, you know my soul, Chris. We've shared many bread together. Take this from me quickly. Last night, this is how frustrating it gets. Last night, one of the biggest jazz festivals on the continent was held in Cape Town. It's called the Cape Town Jazz Festival. Okay? There were probably 15, 16,000 people that went through this unbelievable attraction in Cape Town. There was a massive VIP area. Companies bought, the normal hospitality. The main sponsor and person that is very much involved is a guy called Dr. Iqbal Survey. You've heard of him. He owns independent media. He owns a company that owns 5 newspapers in South Africa. He's very controversial in the press. He's always under attack. Court cases and everything, right? I know him. I know him well. We know each other through years. But I have my life and he has his life. Right. So just to give you the sketch, I walk in because we were invited to come as guests of this jazz festival. I love jazz. I love the people. To me, it's about mingling. I walk in there. There's a photo being taken of me and Dr. Survey together. He is the host. I say thank you and I move on and I take another 200 photographs. Today, he's suddenly family. Today, he's suddenly the sponsor of the bloody UIM. Today, he is bloody my cousin. Today, and I'm saying to myself, yes, so guys, are we so desperate to link everybody to Satan or whom you perceive to be Satan? So I replied on Twitter and I said, hey, I had a picture with the guy on a picture of 15,000. Now there's, whoa, Chris, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And the problem is our country is hurt so much that they are absolutely sensitive to everything that happens. I'm putting that on table because if it's Bill Gates, if it's Rajni Sunak, if it's Bill Clinton, if it is whomever in the world, there's a story about everybody. There's a story about me, Chris. There's a story about you. And all that I'm saying is there are actually certain people that are not here for evil purpose. We are here for good. And here's my last on this point. We need to be clear. South Africa is not an island, Chris. We must speak to the world. We must speak to people of the world. We need to engage. It is like the wars going on. It's Russia, Ukraine, it's Palestine, Israel. And here's the problem. The minute, Chris, you take a side, you are then on the opposite side. And this is one thing I learned in the Madiba era. I learned from wiser people than me that said, if you want to be known as just and fair, you must never close the door to have the capability to have discussion and negotiation for peace. That's my point of view. But this country needs help, Chris. We need help. We need help because our country went from one of the greatest passports in 94
to rubbish.
To one where no one wants.
Yeah, rubbish. Ireland is going to reinstate the visa requirement for South Africa. 3 years ago, they rescinded it, and they're looking at reinstating it because, yeah, you're right. Your passport has gone from a highly desired to one that's rubbish. And I just saw this. Ernst Rutz was in Romania and I think maybe in Yugoslavia too, but was having difficulty getting back into Hungary because he had to get in line with all the, the refuse of the world, because he had a South African passport. And so he had to wait. Janos, who was a Hungarian researcher, was there with him, taking him around Transylvania. And so once they went back into Hungary, he was sitting on the other side of the border for like 3 hours waiting for him. And that's just kind of sad. Yeah, I can give you an anecdote, a story very quickly too, Neil, about how people will associate with things and make assumptions about you. And this you're going to laugh. This is going to be funny. The bigotry aside, and the person who said it's obviously got bigotry, but so at one of our voting precincts, there are 19 precincts in my district, and it's a large one, but not one of the largest ones. I had a young volunteer there who was really inspired by my candidacy. He went to the debate, and he said I lit a fire under him. He wants to get engaged, and so he helped me out. He was there handing out literature, trying to convince people to vote for me. And a lady came out after she voted, and she came over to him. She said, I was going to vote for Chris. He's a veteran, and I respect that. And he has so many accomplishments. I really thought he's a good candidate. But I voted for the Christian. And so my volunteer said, what do you mean? Chris is a Christian. Well, I voted for this other guy because he was in the army. Wyatt was in the army when Obama was president, and Obama was importing Muslims. So I voted for the real Christian. I'm not making this up, brother. I'm not making this up. That's what really happened. I just gobsmacked, to say the least. I mean, so when you don't win elections, sometimes you just scratch your head and go, you know what? It's just not meant to be. That's not a person I can convince of anything if that's their worldview. I mean, first off, the fact that she's got some bigotry against Muslims coming to the country, when we have plenty of Muslims here, but that's another issue in itself. But the fact that she didn't vote for me when Barack Hussein, I was also in the army when Reagan was president, Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, Trump. I was under all those presidents. So do I get credit for all the great things they did as well as the bad things?
But Chris, here's the other thing, just to add. Now they say to me, this person is a thief. No, thief. So what I do is, like I normally do, because I will remain fair and I will remain just, I answered back on X, Twitter, whatever. I said, wow. I said, may I ask, because I'm actually a person that loves info. Could you point me to the date of the court case, the matter that was at hand, and when was the judgment given against him that he was found guilty of theft?
Yep.
Gone.
Yep.
So it wasn't about the person. It was about your spreading of a lie. Now, he might be that, I might be that, you might, but the law must remain the law, Chris. And that's why there's this massive fight about Jacob Zuma in this country, where people are saying, but he's a criminal. And he's a this, and he's a that. Yes, I didn't say so. He was found guilty. But here's the problem, Chris, and I agree. He went to court, not once. He went 3 times with MK Party in the past 3 months, and he won. Now, what do we want to do? Do we revisit the Constitution? You're damn right. We are going to. Under a UIM government, we have asked for a revision of this Constitution. We have. But at the same time, you've got to defend and protect such Constitution. Mm-hmm. It's like a man that phoned me this morning and he was in absolute hysterics. And he said, they're taking my guns away. I said, excuse me? He said, Neil, they are going to take our guns away. And I went, sir, where do you get that from? He says, no, there's an attempt, they're going to. And I said to him, can I tell you something? We don't have it like America as a constitutional right to bear arms. It's actually written in your constitution. Am I right?
Oh,
the right
Second Amendment
to bear arms.
Yep.
So I told him the same. I said, the day that they take our weapons away, which are legal, which are in the system of law, that day we are going to have to be really worried that then this country's democracy have followed the right to defend yourself, the right to carry a weapon legally must be a fundamental right. And I told him this morning, we will battle that out to the last blood if necessary in courts of justice. So these are the things that happen, Chris. They touch points like the new anti-terror bill that was passed. In the future, it could make me a terrorist again.
Yep. Yep. No, I mean, look, I saw this nonsense when I worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency back in the day, and I covered Southern Africa. The ANC wanted a anti-mercenary law they were coming out with, and they were, you could loosely define that as even people helping Doctors Without Borders could have been classified as guilty under that law if it ever got into effect, and it excluded anyone who was part of a declared liberation movement. Regardless of the actions liberation movement. Let's be honest, not the actions of MK weren't all good. There were some bad actions taking place, some bombs and things like that, but the fact that everyone would be absolved of that under that law, it was ridiculous. So I see where you're coming from on that. It's good.
One more point.
Yeah.
I took Devin Hofmeyer as my youth leader. I did. Massive, huge question. But as the UIM now became RVB, it became a right-wing organization because this man, and I went, no, I like him. I like the fact that he's got fight. Now, you will agree with me. I had to say that. This man went to jail for more than 2 weeks because he stood up for what he believed in. And he was associated immediately now as a person that is a problem maker. No, Chris, listen to me quickly. You will agree with me. You are born with a fighter attitude. You can just enhance it later. But if you don't have that instinct in you, it's very difficult to train for a person to become a natural fighter, Chris. We have to get fighters back and then teach them what is the fact of politics. But I will stand with that young man. I will not waver, but again, guilty with and about association. And that is what I'm worried about, is that the country is starting to become draconian. That it makes laws, not because those laws are fair and just, but because those laws are made to suppress the voices of such people.
No, absolutely. It's always a concern. You have to worry. We had this here. We had, we don't have ministries, but departments. But the Biden regime was trying to create a ministry of disinformation nonsense because they didn't like what people had to say. Well, that's why we have natural rights protected by the Constitution. Because the government should be unhappy what people have to say. People can say what they want about the government. Now it's different if you slander or libel a person. That's a different story. And you can't shout fire in a crowded theater. So free speech has limitations. But you can say what you want about the government. That's the matter. So unless you've put a no interview restriction on Devin, I need you to send the young man a message. I reached out to him and I didn't get a response from him. Maybe he's pretty busy. I'd like to interview him as well and get Devin on. But, you talk about how people just automatically jump because we went with the Bill Gates and the Teo de Jager. We don't know what was discussed there. That may not be nothing nefarious. He's a major agricultural figure and Bill Gates is interested in agriculture. So maybe he's just trying to suss out what Gates is after. And so people shouldn't make assumptions about associations if there is one, like you said with the Jazz Festival. So last year during the World Cup.
I'm sorry, not about you, de Jager. Not about that man.
No, it's not. Yeah.
Not about that man. If you met that man, if you know that man, then you would automatically know this man is a farmer.
Yeah.
This man is a farmer at heart, and he would do everything for his people, but he won't compromise his honor. No way.
Yeah. Well, last year during the Rugby World Cup, I did a preview of the World Cup just before I flew to France, and I was there for a month. And I invited Nas Bota to come on. Nas came on, and we had a lekker conversation. People loved it. So I at the end of the thing, I said, "Listen, not to put you on the spot, but it looks like you're not doing any broadcasts with SuperSport for the World Cup." He said, "No, I'm not, Chris." I said, "Well, if you'd like to come on and we can chat before games or do after game analysis," and he goes, "That sounds like a good idea." So we started doing that, and that little clown that doesn't like Steve Hofmeyer that was living in Amsterdam, he claims he's back in South Africa now, started making slanderous comments about me, claiming I'm a racist and all these other horrible things. And then he claimed to have called SuperSport. Next thing I know, after we've been doing it for about 10 days or 2 weeks, and tens of thousands of people tuned into it. They enjoyed the conversation. Nas and I had a fantastic banter, and it was great having an American who knows rugby talking to a South African legend about the World Cup. We were promoting the World Cup. Next thing I know, I get a message on WhatsApp from Nas saying, "Listen, I can't do the broadcast anymore because they say it's outside my contract." And while that may be the case, clearly this ad hominem attack against me, which was based on nothing, clearly had an impact on this. Nas and I have not done a broadcast since then, and I used to be in touch with Nas regularly. I'm not attacking Nas. He's a brilliant person, and he was probably put in an awkward position, kind of like back in the day when he was live broadcasting there with Nick Mallet in the studio. We all remember what happened there. But the point is that when people make stupid false allegations and false assertions and false associations simply because people work together. I mean, I'm not a racist, but even if I was, the content had nothing to do with racism. It had everything to do with promoting rugby. Exactly. So people are just nasty in these day and age, don't you think? A lot of them.
But Chris, here's the problem. Labels.
Yeah.
Associations. And listen, Chris, I've got no problem with it. Communist, fascist, racist, these are labels. But here's the thing. They don't know us. They know our persona. You're very right. I know Nas very well. I served in a company with him at once. This man is passionate about his game, but I can tell you he was put under tremendous pressure because one person, one human being, now phantom this, of 7 billion Homo sapiens in this country. Sorry, here's the word. Het 'n kak nou in jou gekry. They now found something wrong with it, and they had to go and spoil the broth. I think we've become a sad society, but the other sad thing is this thing. This is actually public enemy number one. This thing is the portal of evil. You know, I'm locked, you know, I'm a bachelor, because I'm sitting in my flat. I've locked my doors. I have shut everything. I've got my computer here, and when I'm done, I'm going to have lekker moer coffee, but I'm sitting here alone. I'm okay. But this bloody thing is pumping out crap. It's pumping out evil. It's pumping out rubbish. And maybe at times it just tells me that my Uber Eats is on the way. But for the rest of it, Chris, this thing has become tremendous. We can't do without it. But this thing has made every arsehole an opinionated, credible idiot. So anybody that puts anything on here, just post it. Chris is a racist. That's it. Now it goes into the atmosphere. And then 180 other people are going, did you hear Chris is a racist? Not looking what you are saying, not understanding what you say, but then they do that bloody thing called forward. Oh, Chris is a racist. Hey.
Yeah.
No, this is wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong. It is wrong.
This is what happens. Neil's of this, Chris of this, and then the people take it as gospel.
Yep. That's what.
But
So
apology comes 18 days later.
what's so disheartening for me is that people that should know better fall for that stuff all the time. You know, before I ever talked to you, Neil, before we ever had a conversation, people were asking me to get you on, and there are people like, don't bring that guy on. He's a traitor to South Africa. He's a traitor to the ANC. And I said, well, whether he's a traitor or not, I don't really care. People want me to interview him. He's not a racist, and that's my one hard and fast rule. If someone's a race hustler racist, I have no interest in race and no interest in talking to them. But I said, so he's not that, so let me get him on and talk to him and see what he's all about. And in our first interviews, the first 2 or 3, I put it to you every time because we had different audiences. I said, Neil, How are you going to address the question about you betrayed South Africa, and how are you going to answer the question you betrayed the ANC? And you answered them. You were forthright. So foot-sec, all the nonsense. Piss off. Those people, we don't need to listen to that. But the damage they can do is genuine. Look, I mean, that was a wonderful part of the World Cup for me. I was really enjoying my conversations with Nas, and so were a lot of people. And some jerk off ruined that because of their nonsense. And shame on the corporate elites who just cave like that for everything. But speaking of that device, that evil device you've just shown us, which is more powerful than the Apollo space program, which put men on the moon. Seriously. Yes. Well, come on. They're on the moon. Stop. Anyway, but seriously. So speaking of that evil device, here's another evil thing too. Let's assume or hope that the African National Congress is out of governance after May 29th. Somehow they get low enough and they can't find a coalition partner to take over, and either a minority coalition by the MPC or somehow a majority governs. Let's just go with that. Okay. You're going to take over, and you have very different parties that have some things in agreement, but the one thing you do have in agreement is foot-sec ANC. That's the one thing you do have an agreement. Once they're gone, then you've got to govern. So that's one thing. I want you to address that before we wrap up. And then the second thing about is, even if you do govern, and this is a cautionary tale, I warn people about this, and I'm still warning them, even if someone other than the ANC with the best of intentions and most honest people takes charge of South Africa, the carnage has been so great to the judicial system, to security, public safety, to the economy, to infrastructure, and beyond all of that, you have state institutions that are stuffed full of patronage hires who are there because they owe fealty to the African National Congress. The person was appointed to Transnet in 1999 and is still there. You will have go slow work. I'm not claiming there's a lot, not claiming about all, but you'll have some who are go slow, who won't do things intentionally to undermine, just like happened when Trump was president. The bureaucracy actively undermined the Trump administration. That's a very serious concern. I don't think anyone else is mentioning that. So 2 points there. Number one, do you agree that now look, there's a lot of hardworking South Africans bureaucracy. I'm not trying to disparage them, but there are people out there that aren't going to do the job or aren't capable of it. So questions about, do you agree with that statement? If not, why do you disagree? And number two, what happens? You'd be like the dog chasing the bus, right? And then you got you latch onto the back of the bus. Now you've won. What happens on May 30th? All right, you got the floor.
I went to Berlin, spent a week in Berlin to go learn a couple of stuff, understand also coalitions in Germany are active. But I went there for a different reason. I had a great friend who is German, who had his 60th birthday. I went over. But Chris, when I drove past the Holocaust Museum and the wall, Checkpoint Charlie, that area, I noticed graffiti that was sprayed on the wall. And it is German, I will translate, but it said, "Wanneer du nicht Veränderung bringst, Veränderung kommst nicht." Now it's a simple sentence, which means if you don't bring change, change will not come. Now you think it's such a simple terminology, but for Germany it was big. For the world it was. And it's now for South Africa so. So answering the two questions. Number one, I can tell you very clearly that if the multi-party charter wins, we are not going to be surprised, okay? We are preparing and have prepared for one solid year. Every second Thursday, the leaders of the multi-party charter parties, unabatedly and without stop, have met. Every second week, without fail, by the way. So we have not been sitting around twiddling our thumbs for a year. Myself, John Steenhuisen, Herman Mashaba, Michael Beaumont, Peter Groenewald, Corneille, Mulder, Slabisa, Dr. Luyenge, Kenneth Meshwe, Wayne Thron, we all meet.
Christopher Claassen.
We meet every second week. So I want to assure the public that when we take government on the 1st of June, which then tells us statutorily 14 days we've got to declare government, we are ready. Did you hear me? We are ready. We haven't been diddling our thumbs. That's point one. The people in the multi-party charter are also not people that are unintellectual. These are leaders. Now, you might not like some of them. You might not approve some of them. I have been with them for a year. I've never been with them before because I have no reason to come and daddy and tell you which jelly tot I like and which smarty I don't. I can tell you they are leaders. And the one thing I love about them, irrespective if I totally disagree with them, is their willingness to continue to find a way. Do you know how many times in a year we had to compromise, Chris? Do you know how many times one or two parties had to bend the knee? Which is unheard of in this country. It's unheard of. The fact that 11 parties are still together in South Africa is unheard. But we are clear. Change of government must come. Wanneer veranderings kom nie. So we are ready. I'll tell you that. We are ready. We are 24 days away. The multi-party charter is a great opportunity to win. And when we do, we will take charge. We have agreed already on a government of national unity. And also, by the way, it's not just the people of the multi-party charter that will be spoken to after the elections. I want to teach the people quickly, coalitions do not happen prior to an election. A coalition happens after an election. So if there are other parties, many of them, the Raisam Zanzis, the Bosas, the parties that were not part of the multi-party charter, I am definitely of the opinion that if they were to come after the election, bring their 4%, their 3%, their 2%, or like the Springboks taught us, 3 times in a row, +1, we will definitely not close the doors. Secondly, there's always a differentiation of opinion, Chris. There's an opinion on my point and your point, the public point of view. I can't answer that 100%, but tell you that the mood of this country, 24 days, because I'm sitting here, the mood of this country is electrifying. There's something in the air. Change is going to come. And be it not now, it's coming. And you know it's coming. Coalitions, though, are a fact. But what is interesting is one point you've not raised, maybe you would. I'm very interested to know what the outcome is going to be in the Western Cape.
Well, we can touch on that absolutely now. They bring it up. It's fascinating for a number of reasons. Number one, this is a topic that virtually no one's discussed, and maybe you've thought about it. Maybe you've talked about it there. But the ANC has been working very hard to rise its poor performance in the Western Cape. And I don't know how well they'll do because the Ipsos poll and the Brenthurst poll give us different outcomes, although there's some similarities in some of the others. But some of these other polls, the ANC's stance with Hamas and its pro-Palestinian position, they strongly believe is going to get them a lot of colored Muslim voters from the Western Cape. And that may in fact be the case. And if that's the case, this block of people traditionally who vote overwhelmingly for the Democratic Alliance, would the Democratic Alliance go from its 55% in 2019 and its 53 in municipal election 2021, but that's not really germane, but 55 down to 49. And that could have an impact. Plus, we don't know what's going to happen with the EFF and the Patriotic Alliance. People are talking a lot about the Patriotic Alliance, and maybe that's where you want to go. I don't know. Gate McKenzie, I don't have a good feel for that. I mean, I'm watching by-elections, but the by-elections, you know, we keep seeing disastrous outcomes where the PA goes, like in NYSA. It's a disaster now. It's like a sewage pit. It's really sad what's happening in NYSA. But the Western Cape, I think that's where you're going. Will the DA be under 50%? If so, what happens? You've got the rise of this referendum party, which I don't know how they're going to do. The UIM also has a lot of support in the Western Cape, and let's just be honest, not to categorize people by ethnicity, but colored voters seem to gravitate to the UIM. You seem to have a lot of interest from people who come from that demographic. So, is that where you were going with your question or your point?
Yeah, Chris, I don't think a person can have a full discussion about the politics of the day in South Africa if you don't look at those things that are really happening on the ground. And specifically, we all know that the Western Cape is the battleground. And it's not just the battleground for the DA. It is the battleground of the ANC. It is the battleground of the PA, Good Party, Fadil Adams's NCC. Everybody, every dog and his bollocks is focusing on this small little province. And here we are. So that's why I said you didn't highlight the other provinces, because that's a natural. But the Western Cape is a strategic bastion and piece of equipment in this country. So let me tell you, when you speak to people like Dr. Corne Mulder, who's, by the way, the longest serving parliamentarian statesman in South Africa, he has a lot of perspective. You know, they say the most important poll is probably the electric poll. So I'm not always looking at those polls, because many of them are biased, but they give you an algorithm, right? Someone said to me the other day, said, Neil, are you worried about the PA, or are you worried about NCC, or are you worried? Because they're drawing a lot of people in town halls, and they're also winning a lot of by-elections. I'm not worried about anybody. I'm worried about the coming of God and that my place is right. The rest I'm not worried about. I am concerned. They say, likes on a Facebook, followers on a Facebook, don't make a cross at the day of the election. The amount of people you put in a hall and you give them a t-shirt and a food parcel doesn't mean they're going to vote. They're not even eligible to vote. So I don't look at that. I'm looking at the factual discussions, and I'll tell you right now, the Green grouping, the Patriotic Alliance, you can't deny. I see it. They have risen here. It's called the Battle of the Brown Child. That battle is true. And you are right. I draw a huge proportion. I mean, that's why I'm a councillor. That's why I got 10,000 votes in the Western Cape, round number 1, is because I don't represent the ultra left or the ultra right. I don't. I am a person that sees myself as a very, very middle orientated, just cause of being fair. I'm a moderate, but I'm not a moderate in my cause, Chris. I'm a radical in fighting crime. I'm a radical in avoiding racism, but I'm moderate in my aptitude of leadership. I'm a strong leader, but I am not going to be radical, use race as a card to save a country, but I will make sure that the people that were irresponsible in suppressing racial groups, that is in the past, and the people know it. So yeah, we have a huge following within this community in the Western Cape, because they know that we will fight for them no matter what. And by the way, Chris, just to tell you, coalition talks are already happening in the Western Cape. It's not going to happen. The coffees are being had, my friend. And if they don't, then they are dumb, because politics is a game. It's about numbers. It's about coalitions. But I'll tell you, I'll be very surprised, Chris, if there isn't this year the necessity for the DA to have a coalition in this province. I would be very surprised, and it's nothing, it's nobody, it's not attacking anybody. I'm telling you, this is going to be close. This is going to be a percentage of margin in this province. I can tell you that, because 3 things. You said it. The Israel-Palestine scenario, the awakening of the brown child revolution in this country, and thirdly, they have taken a bash nationally everywhere. You know, when I go to public debate, it's like going to a tennis game at Wimbledon, Chris. It's the DA and the ANC publicly at loggerheads and publicly, brutally being attacked by the public on both sides.
You know, it's definitely happening, and certainly you see it in the legacy media as well. It's fascinating. A lot of the other parties are having a hard time catching attention because of all the focus on Zuma, MK, and then when they do talk about the DA, and they talk about the ANC a lot too. But you know, it's you make an interesting point here, and this is something I sort of knew, but I learned firsthand during my campaign. The presence of posters and yard signs and T-shirts being handed out doesn't indicate who actually goes to the polls and marks that X or pulls that lever. 2 things. Number 1, I went in a neighborhood in a place where I did very well. One of the few places I did very well. I did okay in most places, but I did very well in one place. And I went down this street that was, it's a road that goes up, and then there's a brand new development built on the side of a hill with like 400 houses on the other side. One of the gentlemen said, hey, you need to go over there on that street. All those people are veterans, or they've got family members who are in uniform, and they're all conservative, they're all Republicans, they'll love you. And so I went over there and I knocked on doors, and sure enough, they were right. Yeah, those people love me. They wanted to vote for me. Put signs up, and there were 8 houses there. 7 of them people asked for, or I asked them about signs. One of the houses, my opponent had his sign in their yard. So I knocked on the door, and you still go, and I bring my palm cards with me to tell people who I am, so I got those with me. Still got 2 of them left here. So I bring those up and I hand it to them. So by the way, just real quick, you see these 2 pictures. The one photograph you see, I don't have a beard. That's me 4 years ago when I got out of the Army. And the other with a beard is me after 3 years of Joe Biden. Anyway, true story. But yeah, so the point of the story is that I actually, it's true. That's true. It's a true statement, by the way. The point of the story is actually that I knocked on the door. They had a yard sign out there. And I said, listen, I told them who I was, and the lady seemed very interested and enthusiastic. And I said, I noticed you have one of my opponent's yard signs in your yard. She goes, oh, that. They came by and asked if they could put a yard sign in our yard because we vote all the time and we're registered Republicans. And they told us that he's the Republican in the race. So we said, sure. I said, well, he's not the only Republican in the race. There are 5 of us. Can I put my sign? So shortly after that, my yard sign was out there. But the point is, I knocked on thousands of doors, and I talked to probably at least 2,000 people, probably, maybe more. And I didn't get that many votes. Which tells me that people, despite being enthusiastic, despite professing a like for the candidate, just don't go to the polls. We had like 18, Chris, 17% turnout. It was terrible.
I live your life. But I'll tell you what, Chris. There are 400 seats in Parliament.
Yep.
There are 52 to 53 parties going to be on the national ballot. That's a fact. The fact of the matter, Chris, is that I'm asking the people of this country to send me to Parliament. Nowhere else. I'm asking them not to trust me, but to let me earn their trust because, damn, Chris, I've worked 4 years now. You know it. I've not stopped. I want to say I'm not a career politician. I'm not going to be in politics for the rest of my life. I've given it a time period. I'm fighting to deliver change. All I'm asking is that what have you got to lose in this country by sending a new person with a new attitude and that's hungry for change? We can't, and I think you'll agree, you can't expect, Chris, to vote for the same 400, put the same 400 in, and then expect something out and a different outcome, Chris. That's crazy. So the UIM is here. We're looking at all the scenarios on earth, and we will be the party that will not promise you that we can deliver homes and lights and different potholes and change of crime. Because I can tell you one thing we can do, and you know we can, because you just need one voice. You don't need 100. Just one voice can make people be accountable, Chris. Now I'm listening to all these parties make promises, make threats, and they're selling it, Chris. They're selling it. But I'm telling you now, the people that are listening here, 1 June, we will know. I will go to Parliament because we will get a seat or 3 or 5. And I will be the one that will read the lists of all the promises they made and keep them accountable by all, listen to me, means necessary. But one of the biggest questions no one is asking us, and that's weird, is I'm not worried that we will not change this country. I'm not worried that we could have an MPC government. Because here's a very, very, very big question. I'm worried that if the African National Congress loses the election, that they won't hand over power.
They won't hand over power. No, a lot of folks have been talking about that. That's something out there. You know, you talk, Neil, about, and unfortunately we'll have to wrap up, not because I want to go. We got a great audience right now, but I'm eating a lot of your time here, and you've got campaigning to do, even though it's a Sunday. But, you know, you talk about basically, you know, the same troglodyte fossils that the ANC throws in there again and again and again and again and again. And people, you know, ik praat niet Afrikaans nie, maar genoeg is genoeg. No?
I say. Well, can I tell you? Ja, Chris, jy's 'n boer, my broer. Jy's 'n ereboer. Chris, yeah, I have a very great vice president. Fatima is an unbelievable partner in this fight. She's been with me since day one. She always says to me that nothing surprises her anymore. This thing in politics have taught her, and she's been through life. We had a great mom in her mom. She passed away. Before she passed, I made a commitment that we will fight for her light. Chris, here it is. It's now dark against light. The battle lines are drawn. I made it very clear, and it might be a stupid decision, but I am the president of my party. I'm allowed to be dumb if I want to, but I'm not. Here's a statement. United Independent Movement has made a decision that with our 200 or 300,000 voters in this country, our supporters, that if any member of the multi-party charter, pre or post, signs a coalition, the ANC or the EFF to govern nationally in this country, that we will walk away. We will never, for as long as I live, and I've asked God for grace, I will never form a coalition with the ANC in this country. Never, as long as I live. And if we go it alone, if we stand as this small party with a big heart alone in Parliament, facing now this dark and draconian evil on the other side, then Chris, call me crazy, which I am, I will fight it out alone. Because at one or other stage, Chris, you know, in battle, if you fight hard enough, victory and the light will come. Dark can never, Chris, shut down light. It's not possible. And if we are the only burning bloody torch left because the other people decided to govern without any thought, to govern at any cost is also not right, Chris. The ANC is going to swallow any party that wants to think that they can go into a coalition and run them. It's a 112-year-old beast. It is draconian and it will kill you. So therefore, my last appeal is that we cannot sit with the enemy. They are the enemy of this country today, of the people, of the economy, of jobs, of salaries, of crime, of freedom. So nay, we will stand it alone if necessary. And I'm warning any party that currently is deciding to form that partnership with the ANC. You do it, the people of this country are going to make you pay, and I will help them make you pay. Amen. Amen and amen.
For the 2010 Rugby World Cup, the FIFA World Cup in South Africa, the organizers, Danny Jordan and the others, kind of a checkered history there, but the organizers came up with a Tswana phrase that really, I think, applies here today in 2024. Kenako. Kenako. It's time. It is time for a new trajectory for South Africa. And here's an option here for you folks. If you want to vote for the UIM, you can go check out their website and see what they've got to offer, maybe attend one of the rallies, and you can send them questions, talk to them. Neil, it's always a pleasure. Enjoy your time. Listen, my plan is to be in South Africa for the election, but I haven't announced anything because my passport is not in my hands. It was time for renewal. It expired June 17th. The government has it. We are becoming as inefficient as the South African government, so I don't know when I'll get it back. But if my passport comes back prior to the election, given the significance and the monumental significance of what's going on in the Western Cape, I'll definitely get to the Western Cape for the election, either before or during, but it will definitely be a part of my trip. And if I'm unable to get there before the election, I'll definitely come afterwards in June to follow up and look at what's going on as the coalitions are being formed or what's happening at the government. So anyway, go ahead. You want to interject there?
No, I just wanted to say you must come. In Afrikaans, jy is 'n hartsmens. You're a hearts person. But I'd like to introduce you to a cousin of mine. You've not met him yet.
Okay.
His name is Olof Berg, and it's a phenomenal brandy in this country. So I wanted to say that if you come here, I hope it's not just because of politics, but a good braai, a Olof Berg, a reflection. Because I'll tell you something, Chris Wyatt, and you must not take it from me. I have very, very seldom met a man, even in my own country, that shares the love and passion for this republic like you. You are a phenomenal friend of this country, and thank you for whom you are and what you do. Jy's 'n baie, baie lekker mens.
That's very kind of you. Bye, donkey. Very kind of you, Neil. I appreciate that. Gonna bring a tear to my eye there. I'm not being facetious. You know, it's I get kind of emotional when people talk about things like that. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. All right. Well, the lines are drawn, and as I said, Kenako. Let's get out there and vote, South Africans. In 2021 municipal elections, for months, I tried to urge South Africans to get off their bums and go vote. And so many apathetic voters, especially white South Africans who don't go vote. They're not exclusive. A lot of black South Africans don't vote too. But please get out there and vote. 27.9 million of you or thereabouts have actually registered for this vote. Don't be part of the 40% that Neil says go through the effort to get registered and then don't bother to show up. There's no excuse. You don't have anything else to do that day except go vote. Please go vote and vote anything but ANC, EFF, or MK, and we'll all be better off, I think. Thanks a lot, Neil.
Cheers, Chris. Bye-bye to your viewers. God bless.
All right, so folks, Neil de Beer, the president of the UIM, I'll let him drop off, and then I'll wrap up this stream. We've got news coming up here at the top of the hour. So is Neil able? There he goes. Neil's able to drop off there. Anyway, that was, I don't know what you guys think. It was a lekker conversation. I was able to get in several questions from folks in the audience this time because we did go for an hour and a half. Wow, it was longer than I expected, but it's a great conversation. Again, I'll try to see if I can't get Devin Hofmeyer on the program. I reached out to him, but I didn't get a response. I might have had the wrong phone number. That does happen. Same thing happened with Action SA last year. I tried to reach Action SA and I was given Michael Beaumont's number. It turned out it wasn't a good number. And so when I met Michael Beaumont, he gave me his correct numbers. So waiting to hear back from him. All right, the D has failed, says when it comes to people of Western Cape. That's actually factually not true, Nehemiah. You have to be honest. You can't say it's failed people in every metric. That's simply untrue. The running of the Western Cape is leaps and bounds above every part of the rest of South Africa. Of course, there are a lot of problems, not the least of which are a consequence of national competencies and some DA failures. But you can't say they failed in every metric. That's simply not true. Simply not true. It's one of the most segregated cities in South Africa, yet you are planning to go into coalition with them. That's also a very disingenuous statement there, Nehemiah. The reason it's segregated is because no one can afford land who moves there as economic refugees from the rest of South Africa. They can't afford the land. It's a very defined, circumspect space. There's no more land available. And so people flood into places where they shouldn't be living. No one should be living in the Cape Flats. That should just be open space. There's no reason for people to live in the Cape Flats whatsoever. But they do go there hoping for something better than they experienced in the Eastern Cape or KZN or the Northern Cape or the Free State or somewhere like that, hoping for a better life for themselves and their kids. And that is one reason why outcomes are down. It's like, attacking the United States. Well, the United States has very bad statistics for mother mortality. Well, yeah, maternal mortality is high because of so many criminal alien invaders who come across our borders and pour into this country, who come from broken countries and bring their physical bodies with them that have been abused in other places and then lower our statistics. And so, that's not fair to the DA. I'm not shilling for the DA. I've certainly criticized them a lot. But Nehemiah, that's simply not factually correct. So let me just flip that on its head there, Nehemiah Fredericks. So would you recommend that the UIM or the Freedom Front Plus go into coalition with the ANC, who has resulted in a country with 90 murders per day, a country where most of the senior politicians of that political party in power are accused of corruption? Shall I go through the list? Zandile Gumeda, Ace Magashule, Cyril Ramaphosa, Paul Mashatile. Shall we just continue? Zweli Mkhize. The list goes on and on and on. And they failed South Africa with their communist policies, their racist policies. I mean, come on, brother. That's you're just being negative. And at some point, people have to focus on what's achievable. And that's what's going to come for South Africa after May 29th. What is achievable? If the ANC gets sufficient percentage of the vote, then the only viable option will be a coalition with the ANC, which will be disastrous for South Africans. We'll see what happens. But you got to be fair. Thank you for an awesome live. As always, biggest problem is many people are moving here. Exactly. Yeah, they move into the wetlands. That's what I was getting at. Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody. Mario Falante Rebello says, so true, Chris, heart and soul. Well, thank you very much. Very kind of you. And thanks to my guest, Neil De Beer. I don't know if we'll get him back on before the election. If we do, it'll probably be a short if I'm in South Africa in person with microphone sort of interview. But anyway, this was fantastic. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for hitting the like button. Can we get a couple more likes? Also, for this broadcast, we had a smaller audience in the beginning, but the audience really surged towards the last third of this interview. Thank you all for showing up, for pushing up the numbers, and also for sticking with us. Let me tell you something. When it comes to a program like this, 90 minutes or less, or 2 hours or less, if you have an audience that hangs around for more than 15 minutes, that's an incredible success, because you have to take into account all the hundreds or thousands of views that come in where people just pop in for a couple seconds, they leave, and that would take someone to watch the whole program, reducing them to half that time. So we have an average view duration on this program, this broadcast, of 21 minutes. Thank you so much. That's incredibly long duration. Means a lot of people really but wanted to hear this conversation. So thank you all so much for that. I'll be back with the news in 17 minutes. So come back and join us for the news. I haven't set that broadcast up because I've been busy, but I do have the news. I've researched it and I'm ready to do it. I just have to set up the stream. So come back on the channel in about 15 minutes and you'll find the next program ready to roll on this Sunday, May 5th, 2024. And once again, to my guest, Neil De Beer, thank you very much. Ke le boa. Bye bye, donkey. All right, folks, that's it. We're going to wrap up here, and we'll see you in a few minutes for the news. Cheers.